This episode of Empower Her Radio with Dr. Corey Wynn is proudly sponsored by the Cliff House at Pikes Peak in Manitou Springs, Colorado. The Cliff House is more than a luxury escape nestled at the base of America's mountain. This November, it becomes the heart of generosity as they host the inaugural fundraising event for the Carl Edward Foundation. The Carl Edward Foundation exists to bring dignity, mobility, and freedom back to patients and families facing spinal cord injuries and progressive neurological diseases. These diagnoses can change everything, but they don't have to define everything. Okay, I don't love this. Hold on. Welcome to Empower Her Radio, the space for powerhouse women ready to step into their next level of abundance, purpose, and personal freedom. I'm Dr. Corey Wynn, a high performance coach, doctor of physical therapy, philanthropist, and business consultant. I help ambitious women align with their highest calling, expand their wealth and impact, and create a life that feels as good as it looks. If you're a high achieving woman who's built success yet finds yourself craving more alignment, more purpose, more ease, you're in the right place. Here, we bridge the gap between ambition and fulfillment. Through transformative conversations and proven strategies, you'll gain the courage to step into the fullest expression of you. Build a powerhouse business that aligns with your expertise and divine gifts, and lead your life, both personally and professionally, with unshakable confidence, worthiness, and compassion. This is about expansion, legacy, and owning your power unapologetically. You already have everything inside of you to create a life of unlimited possibility. It's time to unlock it. Welcome to your next level. Let's dive in. Today's guest is someone whose work is truly changing the narrative for ambitious women everywhere. Fanny Tristan is a licensed clinical social worker, trauma therapist, coach, and the founder of Her Soul Supply, a coaching platform for single Black and Brown women who are ready to release burnout, break free from toxic patterns, and build lives rooted in self-trust, purpose, and aligned relationships. With over 15 years of experience, Fanny brings a blend of clinical expertise and lived wisdom. She knows firsthand the emotional tension between ambition and intimacy, and today she's here to show us that you don't have to work to be loved and that your worth goes far beyond external validation. Fanny, I'm so honored to welcome you to the show.
Thank you so much, Corey. I'm happy to be here.
So I'd really love to first let you just share your story. Can you kind of take us back to the season of life when you realized that what success looked like on the outside maybe wasn't matching how you were feeling on the inside?
Yeah, yeah. How far back should I go? Um, I would say when I was in school, like when I was in social work school, I had realized that I had a passion for working with people. I had started off as a psychology major, and like most people that went to college, we change our majors at some point. And I really fell in love with social work, not only because it did have the psychological component that I really liked about psychology, but it was the study of people and systems and culture. And that really added all of the color to the kind of work that I really wanted to be learning about. And I think that really started my journey to exploring myself
Mhm.
as a person in a system and the things that I can combat and challenge because I don't have to be okay with the status quo. I don't have to be okay with the kind of
Yes,
the lot in life I was given.
yes.
And so that really set me on a path towards, intentional travel and really building intimate relationships in all different ways, really assessing those things for myself, and really wanting to invest in community myself and really be able to provide, the things that I have learned, not just academically, but also just through living my life. And I really found a lot of that work has been with single women lately.
Mhm. I love that. Well, and you talk about too working with like the firstborn, high achieving woman who struggles with perfectionism. And when we were chatting about you being a guest, I was like, pick me, that's me. So many of us have pushed and grinded and hustled and had the feeling that everything had to be so perfect to be accepted, to be validated, to show that we have the expertise. How did that kind of form in your personal life? You talk about being a firstborn daughter of an immigrant and an overfunctioner. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Oh yeah. Um, so I'm an only child, which also makes me a
Same,
firstborn, first and only.
same. There's
And
a different kind of pressure there.
yeah, it's a different kind of pressure, but it's also very much the same in the fact that you are kind of expected to be a bit of a trailblazer,
Mhm.
in very specific ways because of your sex, right? I think there's different expectations for boys and girls. And I think growing up, um, you know, a- as someone that felt very out of place, not just culturally, but also just being a young black girl in like a predominantly white area, or also being like a thick girl, and I just always felt like I was on the margins. I'm black and Latina. I was born in Peru. Most people don't know black Peruvians exist, and so I just felt on the margins even within my own culture, even amongst people that did look like me. And so I think there was just a lot of pressure for me to assimilate, because that meant security, it meant safety, it meant access to resources. My parents, they're the hardest working people I've ever known, right? And so everything that they've done has been, for me to thrive. Um, including them wanting to settle in this country. And so I think that there has always been a lot of pressure around the idea that you have to succeed because look at all the sacrifice that people have made for you. And so to do that in an environment that you're experiencing that those doors actually aren't open to you, but your parents think they are, right? Because you're having it better than they did, right? But that says a lot, right? That you're in this place where you realize that you have this privilege, but then you still feel like you are not invited. And so that has been a really, really important part of the way that I see the world. Um, and I feel like I'm not answering the question. I feel
No,
like I'm on a
are
tangent.
absolutely answering. And I just want to take a second to honor you for that vulnerability because I think a lot of people don't know those struggles. They don't know that that's a feeling that you have. And I think more generally, as women, we do try and fit ourselves into this box or that box to be accepted, to say that we're good enough, to show that we're worthy. And you talk about being an immigrant and talk about being a black and a brown woman. And I so honor you for all that you have accomplished. And I want to be incredibly clear that you are welcome. You are worthy. You are absolutely supposed to be here. And I'm so thankful that you're willing to be on the show today to kind of educate us on maybe some things that we didn't know about, maybe some things that we could all open our eyes about. So thank you for that. And
Yeah.
and and I don't want to put words in your mouth at all, but what I found as a and also a only child, first and only, this overfunctioner. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like for me, that means almost having to go above and beyond for everything to be worthy. Is that kind of what you're talking about, or is it something completely different?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely a big part of it, right? Because I'm not only a young girl that has to go to school, and school is your job, and your parents just want you to do well, right? But there is that kind of unspoken pressure of this needs to be worth it,
Uh-huh.
right? So you need
Yeah.
to do very well.
Yes.
Um, and,
I have heard those words before.
yeah, yeah. And that idea that my job isn't really done when I come home from school. Like, I think it was a big surprise for me as I got older and I started hanging out with my friends after school that they had just like a fun teenage life after school, right? I think, for me growing up, it was like I went to school and then I had to do the performance. And then I would come home and then I would get on the bus and help my mom with her job because she had a part-time job in the evening. I didn't have childcare or anything like
Mhm,
that.
mhm.
Or I'd have to go to doctor's appointments with her because I was her translator and she really struggled with English. And so I kind of had multiple jobs. Like I was
Yeah.
always on, and so I didn't really have a boring childhood, right? I think a lot of us can think about childhood as like, oh, you're in your room a lot, you're bored, and you just want to see your friends. And I did have moments like that, but I think the majority of the time, I feel like I was working,
Uh-huh.
um, whether it was at school or it was at helping manage my family.
Do you think that that has had any impact on your ability to like be still now? Like, are you somebody who is so excited for it to be quiet and for you to be left alone? Or do you find comfort in always being busy and having something to do? And like when you don't, do you feel like what I should be doing something right now? Like, or have you had to unlearn some of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had to unlearn a lot of it. I think something that has been really helpful about growing up an only child is that I find peace and quiet familiar in a way. I'm not afraid of being alone, right? Because I had to spend a lot of time alone and I was isolated, right? And so, for better or for worse. And so I feel like it was very easy for me to tap into being alone. But there was always a time limit to it. There was always like okay, well, I need to go outside. I need to go do something. I need to, go find that list of stuff I've been wanting to do that I don't have time to do because
Uh-huh.
I need to feel productive. And that
Right.
definitely drives some depression over time, right? If I do that a little too much.
Mhm.
And so I really have to work at being okay with relaxing, and that it doesn't have to be like a big vacation,
Right.
or that it doesn't have to take a box. But finding ways where I can find a balance of like, what does rest look like for me? I think I struggled with seasonal affective disorder a lot,
Uh-huh.
especially over the years. And I think something that I found helpful is these kinds of set it and forget it type of tasks
Uh-huh.
that kind of scratch the itch of productivity, but I can set it and forget it.
Mhm.
Hence why I love my slow cooker, my pressure cooker, where it's
Yes.
like, well, at least I made a soup.
Yes. Yes.
I binge watched TV all day, but I made soup.
Well,
So,
and let's be really clear for our audience, like for those of you who are listening today who like maybe weren't only children or weren't oldest children, um, there is very much this I should be doing something right now. I should there's something that always has to be done and this almost manic is not the right clinical term, but like overabundance of anxiety or guilt a lot of times if you're not doing something. So I've had to really unlearn a lot of that too, that sitting still and reading a book is absolutely perfect for that moment if that's what's needed, and allowing that self-care to fill your cup, whatever it is, allows you to then be more productive on something that actually moves the needle later versus just doing all the things that are on the task that maybe doesn't require your expertise.
yeah, no, and I think that that's been perhaps one of the biggest lessons in my entrepreneurial journey.
Mhm.
right? I think any business coach that you talk to talks about the value of your time, right? It's kind of your biggest asset. And, now that I'm about almost 6 years into my entrepreneurial journey, I started my private practice in 2020, and then the coaching work started in 2024. And I'm busy. I'm now running two businesses. I got a 5-year old, a husband. I
Awesome.
have a social life that I'm trying to maintain because I'm not just a mom and a
Yeah.
wife.
Yeah.
And so my time is very limited, and I have to be very, very careful with it. And I really, really struggle sometimes with organizing my time in the way of, okay, what is actually a priority and
Mhm.
what is that scratching the itch of ticking something off a box? Because sometimes I just want to do that.
Right.
Sometimes something has been on the task list for like 2 months. And I'm like, I can just stay up all night and do it. And then I won't have to worry about it and not really recognize the cost and the domino effect that that causes me in my functioning.
Right.
Right? And
Right.
so I think that's definitely something I still have to grapple with. Is like, okay, no, what is the long-term plan? What is the big goal? What's the big project? I can't have more than 3 projects at once because that is wild,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And just really being respectful of my capacity.
Yes. And I'm so glad that you said all of that because a lot of moms listen to this show and giving them permission to be respectful of that capacity, to recognize you're not just a wife or just a mom or just a social worker or just a PT. Like we carry a lot of hats and the mental load of that can be a lot sometimes. And it also can be incredibly rewarding. So, a lot of times in my own coaching practice, I want my clients and listeners to like step back for a second and be like, wow, look at what you've accomplished. So, the fact that you have two businesses going on, you're a wife, you're a mom, you're a friend, and all the other things that you do, like that's awesome. And I think sometimes we do get like, well, I'm just a mom or I'm just this. And it's like, no, you're never just anything. If you're following your path that's aligned with what lights your soul on fire, then you're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I feel like that's something that is also very gendered, right? That we downplay and we minimize the accomplishments, the effort. Um, Whereas, oftentimes your male counterpart is asking for help to do everything that you would just do by yourself because you're used to doing it by yourself, right?
Uh-huh.
So I don't think we give ourselves enough credit at how we kind of make the world turn, especially moms.
Yes. Well, and I think too, something I even still struggle with, and I love your thoughts on this, either with your clients or with yourself, is asking for help. And
Mhm.
I just the other day, my daughter was sick, and I looked at my husband and I looked at my calendar and I was like, all right, I need help tomorrow. Like if she's still sick, I can't be stay-at-home mom tomorrow. And he was like, all right, I can do that. But it's just the asking, you know? For me personally, I'm very blessed. I don't get pushback when I ask for help. I just don't often ask. And I think that's where so many of my mom friends and my clients forget that we can ask for help. Because I think, I don't know about your mom, but growing up, I watched my mom literally do it all and never ask for help. And when my daughter was little, I was like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? Like, I just don't feel like I can do it all. And then this light bulb finally went off of like, but you don't have to. You don't have to.
Oh, yeah. And, you touch upon something that is really important around not getting pushback, right? And watching our mothers and our mothers do it all. And it makes me think so much about patriarchy
Mhm.
because that's the system, right? Where we have kind of been raised to assume certain positions or roles in support of patriarchy, right? And sometimes we don't get the green light to be outside of that role. I think our mothers didn't, right? Like they felt very like it was their duty, it was their responsibility to manage the home, to take care of the children, to cook, to clean, which is like 5 jobs. To be like a housekeeper, a chef, chauffeur, emotional support, and like, you have to dress everybody, like you have to clean, it's just so many jobs. And our mothers weren't with pride half the time because they felt like it was their role. And that was supported by what society expected of them and oftentimes what their partners expected of them, right? And so, I often think about how we really don't challenge that sometimes. Like we turn that into ourselves and blame ourselves for not doing enough, right? Because something we're not always admitting, even if we think of ourselves as modern women, right? I think deep down inside we still maintain that standard
Mhm.
of like, well, I should be doing it all
Mhm.
and I should be able to have it all.
Right.
So I shouldn't be complaining and I shouldn't be so tired and I just need to get it together.
Mhm. Well, and I think too, I was recently working with a stay-at-home mom, and she was like, "Well, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. You just listed off what, 5 or 6 jobs? I mean, there's no such thing as just a mom." Like, as soon as you're put your mom hat on, you have 12 jobs. Let's just be clear. Um, I did want to pivot just a little bit, not a whole lot, but you talk a lot about like intimacy in relationships and ambition and helping women kind of balance both and bridge the gap between both. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that especially since, the pandemic and just so much has happened in our lifetime, um, people are very siloed, you know. Um, People are encouraged to be very individualistic.
Mhm.
I think that we've lost that kind of human touch in a way.
Mhm.
And, I think something that I say to my clients often is that we need to normalize the idea that just because we muster up the courage or to rise to the occasion, to try something new, to extend our hand, to be intimate, to trust, that that doesn't yield a slam dunk every time,
Right.
right? That it doesn't mean that it's going to be pure success every single time,
Mhm.
right? That it's a practice, right? Intimacy is a practice, love is a practice, right? These are
Right.
action words.
Right.
And I think we live at a time where we don't see it, or we start to see the absence of it. And folks struggle with the skills to be able to do it because of pain, really, pain and fear, and having been hurt and not ever wanting to be hurt again,
Mhm.
right? Or being told the cautionary tales from people that we trust and that we love, who have our best, intentions, but also coming from a place of fear and pain. And I think it's really left us in a place where we don't want to try things. We
Mhm.
don't want to make mistakes, especially in public. We don't want to share things about ourselves. And we really have over indexed on these archetypes
Mhm.
that we are of people, right? Like, I'm a hot girl. I'm a wellness girly. I'm my profession. I'm a mom, right? It's just this real like over indexing on the role of your choice. And
Mhm.
now we've just performed those things, right? Which I think is just really far off from the nature of human connection,
Mhm.
right? And how sometimes we are those things because they are something that comes from us, from all the cups that are filled, not just from ourselves, but from other people, right? Like other people also inspire us to be the people that we want to be.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, to your point, we don't talk about our failures publicly. We don't talk about the mistakes we've made or maybe the challenges or the struggles that we overcame to get there. And I think on the one hand, depending on what kind of like manifesting alignment kind of ideals you have, um, like sometimes we don't want to get bogged down on the all the things that are not going right, and we want to truly focus on I'm going this direction. And sometimes we can forget that there will be obstacles or challenges or contrast on the way there. And the more that we can talk about that as women, especially, that opens the door for other women, because I can't tell you throughout my life how many people have looked at me and said, "Well, you have it all together. You had such a quick ride." I'm like, I am not showing the right picture if that's really what you think. But you think of social media and you think of, back when I was a kid, magazine covers and all the things. Um, we don't celebrate the failures. And I heard somebody recently say that rather than ask their kiddos after school, like what went well or how was your day or whatever we typically ask, it was like, what did you fail at today? And just normalizing that you're not always going to be great in math, you're not always going to be great in English or whatever. And so, okay, so you failed at that today. How did you work through it? How did you overcome that? Okay, we're not overcoming it yet. Awesome. Maybe we need a tutor. Whatever it is. Like I feel like that's kind of an elementary level because my daughter's 10. And as a society, I think we can gather around each other as women to say, it wasn't easy to get here. Let's be clear.
Oh, 100%. I think validating that is important, right? Like like opening up the curtain a little bit,
Mhm.
right? Because I think that
Yes.
we do a lot of damage with our silence, you know? I feel like this comes up a lot when we're talking a lot about like pay, like how much you're getting paid. And so I remember having a lot of conversations with people about how people should be more transparent about how much they're getting paid, because that's how we actually discovered when people are being, discriminated against,
Yes.
right? It's the
Yes.
silence that
Like, wait a second,
empowers the
hold on.
discrimination. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And so, I think, yeah, money is like such a great part of it, right? And one of my favorite one of my favorite websites was apartment therapy. Do you know apartment therapy?
I haven't heard
I
of
used to,
that.
I used to scroll. They have so much content on just like home decor,
Oh,
and
okay.
I just think it's fun. And so I used to just scroll and scroll and scroll and look at all these before and afters. And they had this article once about um, how I'm not sure if the statistic is still true, but that the majority of millennials who were buying homes, and this is me like in my late 20s and like early 30s trying to figure it all out, that most millennials buying homes are able to buy homes because of support, like
Mhm.
whether there was like a nest egg, an inheritance, that there was like a boost, right? Like this idea of like the bootstrap of like saving all your pennies and buying your home, like from scratch is actually like a very, very rare thing that that millennials could do,
Right.
right? And so the majority is really being driven by generational wealth.
Mhm.
And I found that so validating because I was just racking my brain about, oh, like I'm not saving enough. I live in this expensive city. I should have stayed living with my parents
Mhm.
and never paid rent. Like all these woulda, coulda, shouldas about like, wow, like I didn't think it would be this hard for me to level up in my life in this way. Not recognizing that there's like a lot of systemic things that are happening, right? The economy is not the same as it was with our parents, right? Buying a home means something very different today, right? And so just even getting that transparency from data saying like, it's okay, girl. Like it's a privilege to buy a home today. And some privileges we have, some privileges we don't. But regardless, like it's not something we need to blame ourselves for. And so I just find information like that so validating and helping me recognize like, oh, this is the world that I'm actually living in and not the world that's in my head where I have identified myself as the problem all of the time.
Yes. Well, and like before we started recording today, I was literally just checking out your Instagram, her Soul Supply, and you were talking about women in financial freedom and like not waiting for the romantic partner to, catapult you in your wealth. And I love that message so much because I do think women forget the expertise that they have. Like, even if you're a stay-at-home mom, I literally was talking to a colleague the other day. They're like, oh my gosh, I would hire a stay-at-home mom for almost any job because she has managed chaos for years. And I thought that that was so validating for one. And then you spoke just a little bit ago about just like the money differences and generational wealth and um I think there's something also to be said, like transparency about money that you're making. But I look back and think if I had to do it all over again, I would still have gone to PT school. But I've wanted to go in eyes wide open in what it actually means salary wise versus debt ratio to begin with. And I think that's a piece that's missing too is a true understanding. And you were talking about on Instagram kind of like the financial literacy, and it's okay to learn about money. It's okay to be in control of your money. So can you speak to that too? I think that there's so much empowering language there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that we have to recognize that financial literacy is something that is completely swept under the rug, right? And like, why aren't we being taught this in high school, right?
Right?
Like, I'm being taught like economics, I'm being taught statistics. Like, why can't I learn about like budgeting
I
and
learned
investing?
calculus and watched my dad balance our budget growing up. And that was like the only financial, literacy that I watched my dad balance a checkbook. And then
Yeah.
I had to manage my own money after graduate school and was like, oh, this is a lot harder than I thought.
Yeah, yeah, it's so overwhelming. And this is America, right? We like to spend money. We don't save as much as other countries. And so I think, we very easily fall um kind of prey to, like, get your credit card at 18 when you're in college. Like, you just get into credit card debt because you just don't know better. And you don't understand all of those things. And I think, that's what your 20s are for, right? Like, you learn these lessons and you learn by experience. But I definitely think that for women, especially because we were raised under very patriarchal standards, the assumption is always like, well, that's like something men know about. Or if I'm in a tight financial situation, or I found myself not being as responsible as I could be with money, there's this like prince in shining armor that can just like take care of things and like buy you a home. Like, I just think it's like a fantasy that is fed to us, that, like, you shouldn't have to worry about that. You shouldn't be pumping your own gas. You shouldn't be, but you don't need to know about cars. Like, it's
Because
very.
you said you're a millennial. Every single Disney movie that came out, the knight in shining armor came and saved the day. I mean, that's
Mhm.
literally what our childhood foundation was
Oh,
built
yes.
on.
Oh my goodness, my daughter's 5. Her favorite movie right now is Princess and the Frog.
Uh-huh.
And so, the kids, they watch the same movie over and over again.
Oh
So I'm
yeah.
sitting here watching these movies over and over, and I'm like, huh, people think Tiana's problem is that she works too much and doesn't make time for love. And the happy ending is that she marries a prince so she doesn't ever have to work. Like, what is this story? That doesn't make any
Yes.
sense. Why are we shaming her about working and having a
Well, and
dream?
and I love the financial literacy piece, also teaching women wealth consciousness and flowing money, and money is energy, and that I grew up with a very scarcity mindset when it came to money. You can't you can't spend it on this because then you won't have it for this, and being able to think of it more as like a river that just keeps flowing, that you flow money out because you have a house payment, and then money flows back in. And if we can learn to like lessen our grip on it too, it changes how it all flows into your life.
Oh yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think for especially for single women who are, in their 20s, 30s, 40s and feeling like, oh, like I'd have a house by now. It's like, you don't know that. You don't know that, right? And there are just so many elements that go into it, and it's not a guarantee that being partnered is going to build you wealth, right? Um, and also there's a cost to that for some people who index on that as the primary thing for them is to marry right, as people say sometimes. And so I think being able to be empowered yourself about knowing what it is that you want, what do you value, right? Money
Yes.
has value because we give it value, right? And so if your value is my little lake house upstate somewhere, while someone else's is traveling around the world,
Right.
or just making sure that they have everything they need in, their nice city apartment, right? Like I think that it's just defined by you, and
Yes.
being able to be clear on a plan that makes you feel good about your financial situation that has nothing to do with what everybody else says is you have to have by this age. Like, I just don't think life works that way.
Well, and I so love that you said that. And I love that you work with single women, because I feel like we're kind of finally climbing out of this moat or whatever of like, I don't have to be married by the time I'm 25. I don't have to be married by the time I'm 30. Like, that it's okay not only for you to follow what you want, as you just said, but that just because your friend is married doesn't invalidate how you feel that you don't want to get married, or you have no intention of getting married right now. Um, so building women up to follow what's aligned for them and only them from the outset, I think that your work is so powerful, because we give our power away so easily. So the fact that you're working with women in their 20s and early 30s and their 40s as single women to say, no, but what do you want? That puts you on a foundation that's so much more solid in the event that you choose to be in a relationship later, versus like me trying to figure it out all at the same time. Um, I think that what you're doing is incredibly valuable to everyone out in the universe.
Thank you so much.
I know we have like 5 more minutes, but I just want to talk a little bit about healing and worth, and that you talk about women shouldn't have to work to feel loved. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it goes back to these roles that we're meant to play. And I think, especially if you are an empath like me, clearly I became a therapist for a reason, but I find that a lot of people that I work with are also very empathic and have also been told that they were too much, and have also been told that they're too emotional, and they need to get it together, they need to calm down. And it's unfortunate because oftentimes the lesson becomes, um, I have to be less like this in order to be liked, right? And I think we do that often, right? I think women often do this thing where like we are very altruistic, or we are kind of the example of good people, right? Of people like in community of like, okay, I'm gonna be altruistic and I'm going to like give away all this extra stuff I have in my house because I can. And I'm gonna make time for this because I think it's valuable, and I'm gonna, be helpful in these ways. And I think sometimes people take advantage, right? Or something negative happens as a result of that. And then we say, oh, well, I'm too nice.
Mhm.
I'm too trusting. I'm too this, which is unfortunate because some of those things are kind of elements to building intimacy and
Mhm.
closeness,
Mhm.
right? And we tell ourselves it's actually not okay to be that, but yet we still long for the intimacy and closeness,
Mhm. I love
right?
that. And just, I think all of our listeners can identify with being too something. I think as women, we've all been too much, too loud, too big, too small, whatever. And just aligning back in with who you are, what you want, not what somebody else told you you should be or should look like or should say, um, I think opens the path for our children to not have to deconstruct as much maybe as we've had to.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because also children do what they're shown,
Right.
right? Not what they're told. I think it's James Baldwin that said that. And I think, that's been a big driver for why I started Her Soul Supply is my daughter, is like I don't want her to grow up thinking the things I thought about
Mhm.
myself. I don't want her to think those things about herself. And I can see because of the systems that we continue to live in, how susceptible she is to that. And
Yes.
so I need to not only be an example of the kind of woman that she can be, but
Mhm.
also that she can be amongst many women who are that way, right? Who don't settle, who prioritize their joy, their fulfillment,
Yes.
that align themselves with partners who balance that,
Mm.
right? Who don't tell them that they need to simmer down or to to not shine,
Mhm.
right? I don't want her to witness that. And so
Right.
if there's a way that I can help more women, tap into that power for themselves, then that's the kind of world that I want my daughter to grow up in.
Me too. Me too. Oh my gosh. I am so thankful that you were on the show today. Can you let us know where people can follow you, get in touch with you, work with you if they want to, all the things?
Yes, yes. So I'm probably most active on Instagram, but you can find me on Instagram, TikTok. I'm also on Pinterest. And you can also go to my website, hersoulsupply.com. You can sign up for my newsletter. I've got a few freebie guides there as well on combating loneliness, building confidence, things for single women. And I have a monthly workshop that I do called Single Empowered and Free. And I also provide some coaching as well. So people can find out about that at hersoulsupply.com.
That's awesome. Do you have any lasting thoughts that you'd like to leave the audience with today?
So something I love to tell folks is remember that the world is always bigger than you think it is.
Mhm. I love that. Oh my gosh, it is. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
As we close out today's episode, I want to leave you with this. Your next level is already within you. If you're feeling that pull for more clarity, more alignment, and more courage to step fully into who you're meant to be, this is your invitation to take the next step. Whether you're an entrepreneur ready to scale or a woman standing at the edge of something bigger, the path forward starts with trusting your desires, owning your worth, and leading with your inner knowing. This is exactly what I offer: private VIP coaching, and where I guide women inside the 10K Club and 50K Club through consulting with She Sells and Superhuman Selling to help you gain clarity, step into aligned action, and build a life and business that reflects your highest vision. If you're ready to explore what's next, let's have a conversation. Book a free call now at www.corywin.com/free call. I can't wait to connect with you. Talk soon.